The title of today's outing is Being on High, My Life, the Whole Story of My Self-Healing, Bringing Out the Beauty Within and Between Us, Seeing exactly what puts us in good spirits and good hands. Through practicing eidetic imaging, concentrating extensively on the animating inner motion pictures that let us see exactly what is moving and motivating and transforming us, we can now see how to circumnavigate the dazing and crazing impressions made on us, while gradually gathering together the inner strengths and lucidity that show us how to see straight enough to become straightforward enough to gain standing and become upstanding. In short, we see how to unscrew the screwy images that keep screwing us up until we realize we can readily outgrow them instead. In Out of Shyness, my ongoing transformative journaling, which I began writing in 1980 when I entered a training analysis with Dr. Akhter Ahsen, the pioneering founder of image psychology. I document my daily experience of outgrowing many of the minor and several of the major ills of our day. While working with Akhter, I outgrew the following conditions in approximately this order: drinking, smoking, narcissism, chronic suicidal ideation, manic depression, stuttering, and phobia. Since he retired in 2010, I've succeeded in outgrowing the following on my own: Tourette's, anxiety, schizziness, my parents' protracted divorce, subsequent persistent dislocations, shyness and introversion nigh onto autism, and being labile. Being labile, which many people don't know, is being like floppy, and it's very, very tricky to outgrow. Since December 2022, I've been I'm going to start again. Since December 2022, I've been videoing transformative conversations with Jerry Riverstone, showing how practicing eidetic imaging lets us befriend consciousness through engaging in self-guiding imaging on our own or in reciprocal vision by doing eidetic empathy imaging with others. Being elated by my current newfound experience of being upstanding, I want to share one of my earliest images with Jerry today, along with some current images I'm enjoying, in order to enable our viewers and listeners to see the extent to which practicing eidetic imaging lets us unfold our whole inside story well enough to straighten out. Thinking of straightening out, a funny image just came to mind. During one phase of my imaging practice, I kept seeing Janny, my wise inner child, making tortillas. I should say that I was born and raised early on, not too far north of the border. I saw the tortillas as stand-ins for my journaling entries. One day, Shiva, the Lord of the Dance, rolled out a long red carpet for Janny, and I see her walking along it briskly, heading for market, with a package of large tortillas rolled up under her arm. Then, all of a sudden, Shiva rolled that red carpet up with Janny and her tortillas being rolled up in that rolling. This marked an important change of direction, turning my attention inward, away from marketing for a while. This provides a striking example of how our eidetic images represent and can transform the currents of our consciousness and the pathways they put us on. My images show that I suffered from suicidal ideation from infancy on. This became obvious when I was 14, so I was put in therapy when I was 14 and ended up being diagnosed monopolar manic depressive when I was 42. Then, fortunately, I received a flyer announcing an international imagery conference, and 2 weeks after attending that, began my training with Ahsen. I soon had the following image of my grandparents' golden wedding band. See, in this image, I see my grandparents' golden wedding band slipping down into the shadows under two huge boulders. And I'm realizing that it's lost. I imagine like schoolboys dipping bubble gum down on the grating under a bus stop to pick up quarters. But I realized there's no way I can get to this wedding ring when I see that it starts swiveling up out of the same way it came in, and it swivels all the way up and starts twinkling and hangs over this valley of loss. Just hangs twinkling over this valley of loss. And I understood even at the very beginning that this image was showing me the essence of the process that I was entering into. It was giving me foresight, in other words, as to the nature of the enterprise that I was embarking on. During my first session with Ahsen, not too long before that image came up, Ahsen told me I needed centering. When I heard him say that, I knew what he was talking about, but I knew I had no idea what he meant. Recently, I've been enjoying seeing what it means to have a centering star twinkling within me. For instance, when I was feeling troubled recently and looked inside for help, I saw Shiva rising. Just before that, I'd seen the Lord of the Dance, who usually appears to be a robust, handsome East Indian youth, looking skeletal. His body was mostly disappeared, so all I could see was his skull. With his eyes looking so intently at me, I felt them to be pegs holding the despairing me up. I soon began appreciating the sense of woodenness this brought out in me. It was showing me how to stiffen up instead of feeling crushed and hurt. Then, not long after that, feeling troubled again and turning to Shiva again, I see him standing tall on the fulcrum of a seesaw, his upper chest ballooning, giving me the sense of him being about to rise and have me trailing after him. Since seeing and sensing this, I've been enjoying taking rough moments impassively and numbly now, being quiet and upright in the face of them, instead of embroiled and feeling twisted, demolished, and hurt. This is enabling me to be cheerier and friendlier, approaching life good-heartedly, in good spirits, instead of being on the verge of complaint. Yes, my inner voice agrees. How did this become possible? Staying in touch with the animating images that showed me how to grow whole by becoming fully aware of the images that are the components of my character and selectively concentrating on the images revealing my ability to compose myself. The more I see these images enabling me to do that, the more I appreciate that these animating images form the energy fields that structure my consciousness. The rays of these inner lights keep establishing and reaching for inner space formations that are simultaneously, palpably, both architecturally and spiritually elevating and motivating. Now that's very complicated. I'll read that again, but I was so thrilled when that came to me because I've been reaching for saying that, and I think I finally have said it in a way that, it may take some concentration to fathom it, but in the beginning of the training, Akhter just kept emphasizing that eidetic images are structural. And it really takes some getting used to because the way we relate to images, memories, fantasies, dreams, archives, flashbacks, metaphors, and so on, structural, because we're looking at images and they're going by pretty fast and they're different sorts and we don't pay attention to that they're different sorts. So it took a while for me to grasp that, even though I had been an architectural journalist for several years and had long been a dancer at heart, to really grasp that these animating inner motion pictures are always structuring and restructuring, composing and recomposing everything from our moods to our impetus, our creativity, our performance, our health, our spirituality. So the rays of these inner lights keep establishing and reaching for inner space formations that are simultaneously, palpably, both architecturally and spiritually elevating and motivating. So, not to be perturbed if that's a little perplexing, because it took me quite a few years to really grasp this clearly. So I hope that by my stating this, other people can realize this profoundly dimensional capability sooner. Unlike the memories, fantasies, dreams, archetypes, and metaphors our ordinary consciousness is occupied with usually, eidetic images are substantial. They take place in coherent, vital, and cooperative ways, enabling us to be far more self and mutually illuminating and understanding and transformative as well. In short, eidetic images bring to life welcome self-recognition and growing self-confidence that our ordinary consciousness keeps distancing us from. This enjoyable vivacity that they bring out in us is why students of mine in a variety of venues, ranging from 3rd and 4th grades to senior and body workers and artists, therapists, patients in intensive care, and prisoners, have exclaimed, "Everybody should be doing this." Indeed. Why? Because it lets us harmoniously release ourselves from the difficulties that got into us. Being on high like this with Shiva on my mind is so wonderful. after being lowly for so long. Yes, my inner voice agrees. Now, this morning, I woke up. I had written that late yesterday. I realized that the rays of inner light that become apparent while you're doing eidetic imaging form a spiritual musculature and architecture within you that stands you in good stead within yourself and sends out ingratiating vibes, putting your encounters with others on far more pleasing planes. You're experiencing how beneficially structural and restructuring these animating images are. This is why I see my students' enthusiastic fondness for eidetic imaging as endearing. That enjoyable state is the essential beauty this practice brings to life. There. So now, however you would like to say now, or if you would like to do some reciprocal vision, that would be welcome.
Well, I'm sure we could talk some more about that piece, about the structural quality of it. And I can say that it's really, it's very satisfying to hear you say it, because I've just had an experience last night during the night, which is so in alignment with what you're saying, that it's even though there's some complex ideas in there, it's not hard for me to grasp them because I just experienced it during the night last night. Yesterday, I thought I was getting sick. I was very low energy, nose running, sore throat. And at about 6 p.m., I was so out of it that I decided just to go with it and let myself go to sleep. So I went to sleep at 6 p.m., even though I knew I was probably going to wake up in the middle of the night. And sure enough, I woke up, I think it was 1 in the morning. No, it was 11:30. I woke up, and I was feeling a little better, but I laid there trying to go back to sleep, but my mind was just going from one thing to the next. I wasn't feeling particularly edified by my thoughts. You know, I was having a lot of thoughts, but they weren't seeming that uplifting or useful or necessary. It's just like my mind was on autopilot. And I realized that it was a good opportunity, laying there in the dark, just to go into some imaging and see what might happen. And I started with the first thing you ever showed me, which is just seeing myself in a pleasant spot in nature. And I could go through the whole thing. I don't think there's a need to go through all of it now, but I could get into a little bit rather than just talk about it, if you like.
But
Okay. So I see myself, my age I am now, and I'm at the edge of a river. It's a river in north central Florida, and it's not like a river in a place where there are mountains, where the rivers start as small streams and pour down the mountains and get bigger. Florida's got a different geology, so these springs, just this crystal clear water emanates upward from the limestone bedrock, and that's what this particular river does. So I see myself at the edge of what's called the head spring. It's where the water just rises up from the rock, and so I see this. Looking down into the spring, I see this deep blue hole, this gorgeous blue, little bit of turquoise color, and the water's rising up. And when I see that, I feel excited. I feel energy in my chest. kind of coming up from my belly. It's like that rising up of the water. I feel this energy coming from my root, or then my belly into my chest. And I see myself reaching for a canoe. There's a rack there off in the bushes next to that spring with some canoes, and I reach and I see myself grabbing this kind of dusty, dirty canoe that sits there on the rack, and just reaching for the canoe. It's like my muscles start to come alive. I start to feel broader in my chest. I feel my legs, and lift the canoe. I put it down at the edge of the water. I grab the paddle. It's a small canoe, so I can easily paddle it myself, and feel excited. Part of the excitement is there are alligators that live there, sometimes big alligators. So there's even though I love that place and it's a place where I can deeply relax, there's sometimes this edge of, whoa, there are also creatures here that could eat me. I get in the canoe and I just push off shore, and feel this excitement, still feel this fullness in my body, feel very awake in my senses, like my eyes taking in all the colors, the reflections on the water, the fish in the water. And I stick my paddle in the water and just move it back and forth a little, and kind of feel the pressure of that water against the paddle, and just how I can move the paddle just a little bit and work with that current. And feels very alive, very satisfying. I really feel it in my whole body, my whole body energized. I see my bare feet in the bottom of the canoe. And then I go on this whole journey down the stream, with birds and trees and water and sunlight on the water. And I don't need to get into the whole thing, but there was no mistaking that by doing that imaging, that I shifted like that, from being kind of like, oh, I'm in this kind of frustrating mind loop where it's just like, should I be asleep? Should I be awake? But once I went into that imaging, it really brought me alive, and I felt so energized and felt like myself again. But like very much in touch with that part of me that feels so alive, being out on a small river like that in a wild place. And that by that point it was 1 a.m, and I realized that the moon was climbing higher, and I went out for a walk for a couple hours up the street here. Yeah, and it was wonderful. Yeah, that was a whole other experience. I hung out with a horse for a while in the moonlight. Really, really fabulous. So when you're talking about how these images are structural, maybe I'll just segue into that.
Sure.
Yeah, what I heard you say something like they structure our. I'll just paraphrase in my words. They structure our relationship with ourself, and they kind of structure what we're made of in a psychological way, but also in a completely embodied way and a spiritual way. And that experience was so in alignment with that, because as I've said a couple of times now, I went from feeling flat, frustrated, disconnected, to having really my feeling like I was in touch with my wholeness and my aliveness. So it totally makes sense to me what you're saying, that these these energies that are in the images, especially when we really let ourselves feel them in the body, are not just memories. They're not just, oh, I'm going to think of a pleasant thing and uh, run with it. It's a much different, richer experience that can build up over time. I know I could go back into that again whenever I want to and have different energies come in. It's not like it'll be a predictable rerun. It'll be fresh again as long as I go back into it with that kind of concentration.
Beautiful. Okay, so really perfect illustration of what I want people to realize, that we all have this capability within ourselves. It's just our society, our education is overlooking it entirely, but it's there for us. These are our well springs. They're built into us, and we're overlooking them entirely. So once, I think, like the last time you and I were working, and I told you about with a student talking, and he saw himself as a little boy walking down the road, and I said, see your heels. And that was what put him in touch with this expansive energy that you've just described so beautifully. So that it's all just letting yourself get in touch with one aspect of one of these scenes. And then this whole river basin opens up, and you realize its powers within you. It isn't just an idea. Those energies, there's a compatibility going. And you described that so marvelously.
Mm.
And there's so many ways in which you can see that it's a necessity for us to realize that we are, in fact, at one with this, because we're not doing too well setting ourselves off at a superior distance and being at odds with it.
Mm.
Hmm? So this is not just some idle artistic or psychic fantasy. This capability is of the utmost immediate practical importance to doing what we all know needs doing, rectifying our carelessness. And what it moves on is being careful of our carefulness, because when you concentrate as carefully as you just showed, that's what puts us in touch with the well springs of this good energy. Without being in touch, we don't even know we have it. So we have all this distancing and alienating stuff going on. Yeah. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's just perfect, Jerry. I'm so happy. So now, to have 3 of my students showing how beautifully this is for real.
Yeah.
And how shareable it is. And that when you can transmit the glory of that energy so that it brings wholeness out in other people, that seems to me, then, I feel, oh, that, that's it. That's the that's the essence of relating well. That's the beauty of it. That's the gift we can give each other, is the transmission of these self and mutually illuminating understandings. And when we're more abstract, it's as if we don't have any of that. It's a complete wipeout of all our capabilities when we're being more distancing and abstract and not knowing that what I'm thinking right now, that we have these caverns of capability within us that we're overlooking.
Yeah, and I can understand how when first hearing about this, people could think it's the other way around, could think that, oh, going into the imagination is somehow walking away from life or real life.
Yes. Well, that's the dreadful thing about reason, that they pitted us against this.
But
Yeah.
just using that last night, that example I had, I did go into my imagination, and rather than just be, it's not like I was just in a video game and I wanted to dissociate and uncouple from reality. It's having that experience so enriched my ability to go forward then and engage with the world, because I was already in touch with this aliveness, so that then when I did go for a walk, I felt so receptive, so connected, so present, so not just like I was walking through some fake movie set, but I was in this living scene and I'm part of it.
Your sense of beauty beautifies what you're seeing.
Yeah.